When it comes down to our sales, the challenge that we have is that we are coming off like that salesman, like, hey, can I help you find something? We're asking, we're offering, we're not suggesting, and we're not driving. Where if we suggest a solution to something that they're emotionally tied to, which their instinctive reaction is to protect their time and their money, I know this. And I'm going to use it to my advantage to extract the information that I need in order to learn what you will buy.
Connected to Sales Remastered.
I'm excited to have this conversation, man, because I've been watching you from the far, and I was like, all right, let me just see some different sales coaches out there. Yep. Just personally for myself, I was like, I want to see, for one, who's bringing real tactical advice, because I'm in the trenches every day.
Yeah.
And I've been doing sales for about B2B almost 8 years, so I got some good time in the trenches. And really what I even launched this whole podcast about is just because I really wanted to try to tap into some of those, like, just some of the good things I've done, but the bad and just the pure garbage. I mean, I want to talk about the pure garbage stuff I did too, and just kind of dive into that, because it's like, look, man, once you come out the gate, most of us get into sales because we're trying to get paid.
Yep.
And we're like, okay, I tried this, but I can make money here. Great. We figure that out, and you go in and just mad negative, right? Yeah. So, man, I want to welcome you to the podcast. I have Daniel from Sales Remastered. Thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Well, man, so let's just kind of dive into a little bit about yourself. I want to get into your background, but you're a sales mentor, mindset coach, motivational speaker. You have your old breakfast stuff like Champions that pretty much happens every day, right?
Yep.
Okay. Hip hop.
Yes.
Head.
Yes.
To the core, it sounds like.
Yes.
But most importantly for the audience, I think, is that you're an active sales manager. Like, you're leading a team right now it sounds like they're crushing it.
Yeah. So, I'm currently a practitioner of what I preach and what I share on my channel at Sales Remastered, and I offer a different view because most of the influencers or the resources on these channels are primarily people who haven't done it in a while, or maybe they had studied.
There's a lot of old stuff out there. A
lot of real dated stuff. Yeah. There's this one influencer who is widely known, and I don't want to, drop any names, but this influencer, his main goal on a live sales training was, hey, ask your prospect how much money you got to give me today. I was appalled. I was like, man, yeah, good luck with that. But what was funny though was that the audience was buying into it because they see the jet. They see the, the fancy studio, the pockets full of money. And I think there has to be a movement like the movement you have on your podcast of actually showing sales in a different light. Because a lot of individuals, I believe, look at sales, and even some of us listening to this podcast right now in sales have at some point thought their role is kind of like an underdog, like they're a nuisance. And in all reality, I believe, and I think you'll agree, is that sales really is the connection that allowed the economy to get where it's at. It's allowed our business to be where it's at. It feeds all of us, whether you're in operations or in sales. It's sales that brings the lifeline to that business for you to continue thriving. And so I think that sales needs to be remastered, right? In a sense,
that's a good name too, man.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah.
It's basically, if you look up the definition of remastered, you're basically taking the original copy of something and enhancing it. And oddly enough, it's digital, and of course, these videos it's your digital brand.
I definitely understand what you're up to, and I definitely think that it is needed that we need to have some fresh content out there, because I think that how we sold during the 70s. I wasn't selling them, but how things were kind of moved forward during the 70s, even during the early 90s, has been a shift, especially when you start bringing in social media, you start bringing in the amount of transparency, the amount of data that's out there. I mean, that most of our clients have so much more knowledge about our industries, whatever industry you're in. It's mind blowing to me.
Oh, absolutely! Yeah. Access to information is insane right now.
Yep.
And that's what I think social media enabled us to do, but also in the same breath, because it has so much of a reach, it shows a lot of us as professionals who really want to kind of make something and use sales as a platform to build for our family. It also shows us the bad side of it too, kind of like how movies like Boiler Room or right Glengarry Glen Ross showed you the bad side of sales.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the media's input on sales. They look at you as someone who's going to give them something they don't need, right? And I think that was our reference point coming in, because I've been in sales literally since a little kid.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Because
all right, so this is the perfect segue, because I want to dive into your whole history as well.
Yeah.
I really like to know how you came up as a kid and everything else. So keep on going with that.
Sure.
I'm sorry,
no worries.
Jump in.
So I grew up in Long Beach, California. Grew up on the
Cali raised, okay.
Yeah, grew up on the west side.
Yeah.
West side is more predominantly like Filipino based. And,
okay.
And I did not grow up with my mom and dad. My mom passed when I was a year and a half old.
Wow.
And so my dad, instead of raising me, he let my mom's brother raise me. And so I kind of grew up, from a young age, calling them mom and dad. And I remember learning from my neighbors that, they were laughing because I was saying that, I was calling my uncle and my auntie mommy and daddy as a kid, and they were laughing at me. And I remember finding out why they were laughing at me is because they knew that wasn't my mom and dad.
Wow.
And so growing up with that realization.
Were they older than you, or like all about the same age?
They're all older than me.
Yeah.
My cousins, who I at the time, of course, was under the impression those were my brothers and sisters the whole time, were like a good 10 years older than me. So I was always kind of the baby of the bunch, and so growing up in this environment where you live from family member to family member, I know that the family who took care of you, they didn't intend to, but there's subtle ways to remind you that this is not their job, right? Like, you're not even my kid, right? Go ask your dad for it.
Wow.
And so in order for me to get the things that I needed to get, I needed to actually learn how to sell, right?
At a young age.
At a very young age.
Yeah, wow.
Because it wasn't like I could just ask for something. I was already getting a favor to begin with. Does that make sense? And so I came up in a culture, Filipino culture too, because I'm Filipino. It's our culture to respect your elders. Mm-hmm. And so the last thing you want to do as a kid coming up is, upset an elder, right? And so but imagine as a kid, you want things, you want toys, you want money to go buy comic books and stuff. And so I learned different ways to not only kind of communicate with elders to persuade them to get the response that I wanted, but I also learned different ways to hustle and generate money. From selling toys to cards to pogs. I was that kid.
How old were you once you were doing this, man?
Yeah, I was about 12 years old.
Jeez.
12 years old when I started actually putting two and two together, because I used to get lunch tickets.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I remember those lunch tickets.
Yeah, you used to get a nutrition ticket and a lunch ticket.
Okay.
And so I never ate in the morning. I still don't. And I would hustle my nutrition ticket for 50 cents. Right. And then what would happen is, sometimes, because when I was growing up, like, I lived with my dad for a year, and this is in Carson, and I never wanted to go home because my dad was a card dealer. He was a casino card dealer, so like he went to work at 2 p.m. but didn't come home until midnight.
Right.
And his wife, which was my stepmom, like hated me for some reason, just hated my guts. And she would always say rude things and whatnot, so I kind of stayed away from her. Anyways, I was in the street most of the time because my stepmom didn't go to work until 9 p.m. So they had weird schedules, right?
Oh,
so she was home all day.
So you had the whole night to yourself as a kid?
Yeah,
man.
I lived in Del Amo Mall. I lived on the Torrance bus line. I was going everywhere as a kid, and I had to have money, and so I would flip lunch tickets to get pogs to get more money, and then have enough money to play Mortal Kombat at Aladdin's castle all day. Those were my memories of coming up. And at the time I didn't know it. I didn't know what I was doing was hustling or selling. I just saw the result that I needed, which was to have enough money to last me until 9:00 that night, because I don't got nothing else to do, right? I actually had a blood sister who lived right down the way. So I used to hang out with my nephews. They were actually like my little brothers. But my sister, again, would remind me, like, hey, you're here too many times. You're eating all our food. So even getting pushed out that way, you really have anywhere to go. And Carson's a pretty bad area,
Is it?
For being 12, 13 years old, hanging out on the streets. Mm-hmm. And so I learned different ways of not only reading the streets, but reading body language. Mm-hmm. And so all of this emotional intelligence was kind of fused into my lifestyle, because I had to survive, right? Wow. I had to kind of get to that next level in just a different way. And now I'm sharing with anyone and everyone that it's actually how we communicate is how we get what we want. It's just a matter of how creative you can get to communicate that message, you know? And so now so that is just on a different level because it's not your traditional sales, right?
Right.
Your traditional sales influencer today is more interested about selling you a gizmo or an application or a software. And what I bring to the table is actual mindset development, is reminding us that it's just us, right? So we communicate and sell ourselves before we sell anybody else.
100%.
The sale actually starts within your own mindset. And because it's rooted from there, the momentum of that message is not going to affect the recipient as well if you didn't have the right intention, if you didn't have the right mindset. And I had to learn that from an early age because I avoided a lot of trouble. You know, I sold myself out of a ton of situations for getting arrested.
You know what, man? I was just going to ask you that because I could imagine being 12. I started going out pretty early compared to most of my friends around me, just because both of my parents were super liberal. They were like, oh yeah, just, you know what I mean? Like I had those type of parents.
Yep.
Like let you do whatever. So I used to run around with people who would just be outside because they had nowhere else to go, really.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I really could have went home, but they really didn't want to go home.
Yep.
And so I had a chance to kind of experience lots of different feedback from different people. But I would love to hear how maybe you were kind of selling yourself back then to other people to kind of avoid some of those tough type of setups, man. I mean, because I think that right there is like, it translates so crazy to how things operate today. But I'll let you go.
So, like for example, you know, growing up in Long Beach.
Has it changed a lot?
You know, it has. It's not necessarily so gang affiliated anymore.
Okay.
It's really just about kind of, you know, the image of hustling and money. You know, at least from what I understand, I'm not really knee deep in the streets anymore. Yeah. But from what I gathered from seeing the younger generation, I think they are more entrepreneurial spirit. Like, but the problem is they want the result. They don't want to partake in the actions to get the result. You know, and so that's a different chapter. But you know, growing up in Long Beach, I thought the word "cuh" was literally, you know, that was part of my lingo, right? Like everything was "what's up, cuh?" Hey, cuh, you know, because that was just my lingo. Right. And when I moved to Carson, Carson's predominantly Bloods area, you know, so there's a lot of Samoans, and I remember saying in school, like, hey, cuh, what's up, cuh? You know, and I didn't know that because I was still so young that had to do with.
How old were you at this time?
I was 11 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And so saying it to this one Samoan kid, it was about 7th grade, and this kid, you know, he's in a blood gang already. And it looked like he probably flunked a couple years because he was the biggest kid in the classroom. Sure. He came out, he's all, you know, he was telling me, he's all, you know, F Crips, you know, was a blood gang, and I didn't know what he was talking about because I'm still young, and I'm like, what? I don't even get it. And you learn from that experience of how to sell yourself out of dangerous situations, right? So that was probably my very first experience of understanding the power of words, right? Like because we have an anchor, or we believe, you know, we don't understand the power of the words that we say sometimes, even though it may be naturally coming out. I think also the same applies to sales. We may be naturally asking a specific way, but the power of your words is what's going to actually determine their reaction. And so that determined his reaction because of a simple word, "cuh." But now if we look at it from a different perspective, how did that word affect that person so strongly? It was a sound, right? And so now I put 2 and 2 together. I'm okay, there are triggers, right? Like that's a trigger word. I painted his vision red by that one sound. And so I put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, okay, well, how could I do it opposite? You know, the opposite way. How can I create words that triggers a positive reaction?
Emotional intelligence at its finest.
Emotional intelligence, you know? And so this is all at a very young age.
Wow.
And you know, and then unfortunately, I had bad influence. My older brothers, blood brothers, were actually in a street gang. And they actually led both sides of a notorious street gang in Long Beach. And so I had real negative influences around me. Who took care of me because I was their younger brother, who hooked me up because I was their younger brother, right? And who connected me because I was that person's younger brother. And real quickly, I got into, you know, real bad stuff. And I got to a period where I was living from motel to motel. You know, I had straps on me, I had scales on me, I had bags. I was really living that life. And it got to a point where one person who I was willing to die for, because that was the cool thing, right? Like I'm willing to die for you. You become so emotionally invested for this one cause, and you're young. You don't know what that one cause is yet, but it's cool.
But you're fired up, though.
Yeah, but you're fired up, right?
I get
and
it.
It's just a lot of aggression because you don't know where else to point it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that person ended up turning on me, holding me at gunpoint for some money, for drugs. And when I got to that point where it's like, man, I thought I would have trusted this person with my life. This is really how it is. It's not about the relationship. It's all about themselves. It really woke me up. And, I went through a series of bad decisions. But from those lessons, I wouldn't change anything that I went through because it developed the experience and knowledge that I had. So even though I had to grow up faster than your normal teenager, right, or up-and-comer, I am thankful that I had to grow up faster because I was able to prevail faster as well, right? So through my losses, through my defeats, through my scares, I created a bridge that kind of escalated or at least expedited my process to getting to a successful level. And I got to a successful level when I hit sales. That when I actually started doing sales professionally. Yeah. And I did it all through call center, which is a different game all in itself.
It is a different game, man. Yeah. Man, dude, I think this is going to be one of the best episodes, man. Just because you have such a very tangible way about going through life that obviously you're not talking about something that you read about, which is one way to kind of experience life.
Sure.
Something totally different when you're like, man, I'm here by myself and no one's feeling me, and you have to grow from that.
Yep.
That's a totally different learning experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, but you've obviously grown from it like crazy, man. Yep. So, all right, you just start talking about cold calling. And working in like call centers. That's a tough gig for a lot of people.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people like to say cold calling's dead.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on that, though, man?
I think the impression of cold calling is dead, and it should be dead because the original cold call is when you contacted someone without any knowledge of that person you're contacting. That's a cold call. Mm-hmm. Or contacting someone who's not in the market to buy your one thing. That's a cold call. Whereas in today's society, you're better prepared because you can study your prospect. You can actually get a glimpse of what kind of person your prospect is. And I think that because there's a certain way to cold call. There's two ways. There's one way to cold call where you're just dialing numbers. Right?
Yep, that's how I did it. And
that's how I did it too. We had paper sheets,
like 120 a day.
And you had a color code. So if you highlighted it yellow, it means you left the message.
Right,
but that was your system, you know. And you kind of just went at it blindly because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have CRMs. I remember my first cold call, Cube, it had no computer to it. There was no computer screen, right? It was just a phone and piece of paper.
Excel sheets, huh?
Yeah, so you learn in that way. But then as you develop and you become a little bit more alert of the resources around you, like social media, like LinkedIn, like I can get intel on the person that I'm prospecting. Yeah. And so let's take it to my industry, which happens to be mortgage banking. We have kind of this X-ray of a person's property profile. So I can tell when you bought the home, your name, who's on title and things like that. And so now I have all this information that positions me to fuse in a better script to cold call. But, doing sales over the phone is a little bit different from doing it in person, of course, because, anyone can hang up on you. Anyone can give you an excuse that they're going into a meeting, but, they just want to get you off the phone. So it was a different sale. It was definitely a difficult sale to learn. But I think that with technology, most businesses are going to focus more towards the call center because it's a little bit more efficient. You can have call centers everywhere.
Sure, yeah.
And
how old were you at the time?
Getting into real estate, I was 20 years old.
Well, I mean, as far as doing the
cold
calling, yeah,
as early as 17.
Wow, okay.
16, 17 years old.
All right, so let me try to just kind of piece it together here.
Sure.
So you had that tough issues where you were kind of going around, hard times a little bit, and then you transitioned to something as brutal as getting, at least 80% turn downs.
Yeah.
Right? At least over the phone. I mean, if you're great on the phone, you can get like a, maybe a little bit higher percentage, but most people don't get through to 80% of people, I wouldn't say.
Oh, yeah. It was funny. I used to, one of my first telemarketing jobs was calling to raise money for DARE.
Okay.
You remember that old school keep kids away from drugs activity, right? And what was funny was I was one of the persons on drugs at the time, and I was living that life that I'm trying to sell people to, invest money to avoid. And so you're basically cold calling a bunch of people asking for them to donate. Yep. And I had this, number one, I learned a lot because you're rejected a lot. No one, wanted to give money to someone.
How do you deal with that as like a 17-year-old who just kind of left a very tough situation?
I turned it to a game.
Gamified it.
I gamified it, and so I actually probably owe it to the team lead at the time because he dissected his team into two teams and put them against each other. And then just constantly treated it like a game. Mm-hmm. And so hey, this person raised $50, first one $100 gets to leave for the day. And so then it became a challenge, right? Let me see, and then that camaraderie kind of built up where you almost walked in and hey, I'm gonna get $200 today. But that was just where your attention went. And when your attention was focused on gamifying it or making it into a game, it wasn't any longer a grind, right? It was more or less I don't know why that. Maybe it was a competitive spirit of mine, but you wanted to always be the top person. Right.
Yeah. So, how do you? So, I think a lot of salespeople struggle with the fact that we view their job or what they're selling as a grind. They're like, man, I'm grinding. I'm going in so I can make my calls, I can have these meetings, and everybody knows it. Right? Yeah. I get to always tell whenever someone's viewing their job as I'm punching the clock because I got to get this done because I need to get up out of here. Yeah. Right? Normally you can smell it or you can sense it. Yeah. So how do you kind of help people get out of that grind type of negative grind type of mentality now?
Yeah. So in order, because I get into those states as well.
Yeah.
What I do for work. I live in a sales environment, and of course, in a sales environment, you're only as good as what you brought to the table that day, right? No one cares about the reward you got last month. No one cares that you were, in President's Club 2 months ago. Right. And so it's just constant reset. And of course, that can beat you up because you're like, man, I haven't had the results that I wanted in a week or 2 weeks or what have you. Or you believe that, oh man, I should be farther than where I am right now. And I think the number one, the main culprit is the focus is internal. So the focus is what am I getting out of this versus, how can I actually help somebody, right? How can I utilize my position to genuinely help somebody? And it's a weird thing because you look at it as a salesman, we are a commission lifestyle. Right?
Yep.
So we only get what we give, right? And so we are constantly in this view of, well, if I do this, what am I going to get out of it?
100%.
That makes sense? So we look at our immediate return. Yeah. But when we learn how to develop the mindset of seeing us as building a foundation and looking at it as, well, repetition is key. And what you're doing now is for the greater cause because you're going to build your brand, you're going to build your recognition, but more importantly, you're going to fail more. So what you're going through at that time, it's the reason why a lot of us don't get into sales, right? But if we can figure out a way to dig ourselves out of that, you're going to experience why everyone loves being in sales. Mm-hmm. It's because of that high commission rip, or it's because of that tier. It's because of that sense of freedom, that security. But in order to get to that destination, we need to be prepared to go through what's required to reach that destination. And so if we have the audacity to want the fruits of the rewards and the results of top producer, you want that gaudy watch. Yep. You want that 6-figure bank account balance. You want that nice house and that nice zip code. Well, if you want that, you need to be prepared to experience the lows. And when you're at your lows, you need to remind yourself, hey, I'm on my way. And so I think it all comes back down to mindset. And it is a challenge because you got to be like, well, you have to be wanting to give. And the problem with that is because of our perception, well, if I give so much and I'm not getting a return, what's my point of giving? And really the point on giving is because as you give and you don't get any return, all you're doing is mounting up your experience. And so what you believe are losses are actually your stepping stones to get that much closer to that win. Yeah. And when you get that win, you appreciate it so much so that you're going to remember how you got that win. And when you keep getting those wins, you get addicted to the result. And what I have found is that when you get to that low, when you get to that state of like, man, I don't want to do this no more, I'm not getting no return, you really have to peel back your own layers of your why, right? Why are you there? Are you there just to, get that one rip on that exit that at the end of that particular month? Or are you there to actually build something, right? Like when you think of your why, so people who are listening to this right now are at different levels of their life. Some people are trying to get out of their parents' house. Some people are trying to get to their first car. Some people just want to get to that house, right? And so wherever you are, you have to remember your why. So if you want that new car or if you want that balance, why, right? And so you dig a little bit deeper and you find out, well, you want that car, you want that balance because you want that status. Well, why do you want that status? Well, you want that status because you don't want to let your mom and dad down. You don't want to let your family down. You don't want to let, right, that significant other down. And then you dig deeper than that. Well, why don't you want to let them down? It's because of love, right? Like I love that person so much. I need them to know that I'm their rock, right? And so I fuse that to being the rock of my kids and being the rock of my wife, being the rock of my household. And so what actually fuels me and keeps me out of that mindset is fear. It's fear of the alternative. It's fear of me not being able to protect that love, that rock, right? And so now it's beyond having a bad day at cold calls. Now it's beyond just having a bad month. Really what it's about is I'm going to break past this bad week. I'm going to break past that temptation of not wanting to do those extra calls and not wanting to do this ever again. And I'm going to remind myself that if I'm willing to give up that easy, then I don't really love being the core that much. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost like, well, okay, well, how do I remember to do all these things when you're in the heat of the passion? Because it's so easy.
Yeah, it's really easy.
It's so easy. Yeah, it's
especially
so easy.
Especially with the fact that a lot of salespeople rely on their egos just to be able to kind of make things happen. Like, and that's the only way you can roll up on somebody and say, "Hey, how much money do you got in your wallet?" That's a pure ego play, you know. Yes. But what you're talking about is something way deeper. You're talking about between. I mean, most choices, I feel like, come down to those two. Yeah. You're either about the love or you're about fear and everything else that comes with it, you know? Yes. So, I mean, how do you kind of break that down for yourself? Then? So once you're in the moment.
One of the best lessons that I learned from my mentor, from an earlier mentor in coming up in the real estate game, was that you need to understand three things about that person you're trying to sell. You need to understand what they love, what they fear, and what they perceive as need to survive. Right, to protect their status. And I blew my mind, right? Because I was so young, I was like, oh, that makes sense. So if I found out what that person loves, I can persuade them to follow me. If I found out what they feared, I could persuade that person to follow me. If I knew what they believed they needed to survive and protect their status, they'll follow me. And so then I started applying to myself, right? Like, okay, well, what's the main reasons as to why I wake up early, right? What's the main reasons why I look forward to a 12 hours worth of hustle and how that time flies by, actually how I can have fun in that type of stressful environment. And what it comes down to is because I understand that it's my bridge to get to what I love. It's my bridge to avoid what I fear. And it's my bridge to survive. Right. So now it's just those cores. And so everyone's love, fear, and survival components are going to be different. Right. Like I got kids. Some people listen and may not have kids. And so they got to get creative and say, OK, what am I willing to protect? Right. And so that's where it comes down is the alternative is saying, okay, you have a choice. Like even if it's just you and your pet dog or your pet cat, right? Like you got more than what you believe. Don't focus on that. Focus on where you're going. And if you can focus on the result or the destination that you have ahead, naturally you're going to do the actions that are needed to reach that destination. Yeah. But at the same time, you can also imagine or dream about that destination and choose not to take the actions to reach that destination. But what I have found is that if you dream and just always imagine that destination without taking actions, we become resentful to ourselves because we never reach that destination. We never experience it. And so every day we're telling ourselves, oh, but I want this instead.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Oh,
People
I
get
want
bitter,
that.
man.
Yeah.
I mean, man, it is so tough. I feel like, especially if you came out on the wrong foot and you weren't able to find some quick wins early
Yep.
in your actual careers or just life overall. Period.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like whether you're just 20 something and then you still don't have anybody who actually wants to date you, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. It's difficult for a lot of people to kind of overcome that.
Yes.
Once they have that amount of like scar tissue built up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you mind talking about that a little bit, man?
Yeah. So I guess coming into an environment like when I got into real estate, I was at a low, right? Mm-hmm. Real low. I was actually about to get shipped out to the military. This is in the year 2000.
Okay.
Right? I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
And this is right before 9/11 happened.
Yeah,
And so this is the earlier part of that year. And I was actually supposed to be shipped out to the military because I came to an end of a road where I was just done. This is around the time where actually, one of my friends had pulled a gun on me, or what I believed was my friend. And I just figured out, like, you know what, I got to change my life. Right. So I went back to my cousin, begged her to live with them to get out of that scenery, because environment plays a pretty big role with how you think, how you act, how you see things.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so I understood that if I can remove myself from this environment and put myself in a better environment, which was my cousin, then I could focus on myself. And that's exactly what happened. And so she agreed on the condition that I was going to the military. So I got enrolled. I went everything except being sworn in. I went through everything.
Jeez.
But they wouldn't ship me out because I had a record. And so I had to clear and at least settle my record. I actually got arrested at the block of Orange.
Wow.
I came out of Sam Goodies with a bag full of cartons of cigarettes, CDs, gift cards that I was buying off of, stolen credit cards. Like, I was just in that life. I was in a real bad state. And so I got arrested, and they found, scales or what have you. So I had to clear up my record before I shipped out. I couldn't go out with an open record. In the interim of going through what I had to do to clear my record, I got a job as a telemarketer in real estate. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm still in it about that life. I'm still a little bit thugged out. Right? It's in my lingo.
Sure.
It's the way I act, the way I talk, the way I walk. More importantly, the way I dress. Mm-hmm. And so when I got this job into telemarketing and real estate, I went to Irvine. Now, mind you, Irvine, South Orange County versus LA are two just
stressful.
Yeah. Oh my God. And so
I don't know much about the whole landscape yet, but I mean, I've been through enough times to say, "Oh, this is different."
Yeah, this is different, right? Like, whoa, there are nicer cars around here. Streets are clean.
Palm
they're big.
Better, manicured streets.
Cleaner air.
Yeah.
And so you're coming in this environment, and and the way I'm dressed, I knew I was the underdog, and that was the challenge because I wasn't like anyone around me. Mm-hmm. And, I had a big head, I had earrings, and I wore baggy clothes because that was cool at the time. Everyone else around there were older people. They're more professional. They're going to college. And so I kind of stuck out as a sore thumb. And so I had a lot of pinned up aggression inside, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because I was like, I believed at the time that these people around me thought that they were better than me. And I was so fused up in their point of view that I wasn't even focused on my own point of view. And so I learned a lot from that because I wasted a lot of time being mad at people that I was thinking that they didn't believe in me, that they doubt. But I created that though, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I would take it back because I learned from it. I learned from these bad decisions.
It's a false narrative that people create though.
Yes, mm-hmm. And I found out that it's so common, right? And that's just why people don't speak up. And so anyway, coming into this realm, I started learning that these people are actually not that way. Mm-hmm. And again, that goes back to environment. Because in Long Beach, like, you just thought everyone was against you. Oh. You looked at cars and you were always thinking that someone was going to roll their window down mm-hmm. and probably sweat you or shoot at you. Mm-hmm. And you were always in this defensive state. Well, when I went to Orange County, just a different environment. It was not that way. It was almost like, whoa, like I got to guard myself, but no one's in that lifestyle. No one's in that mindset.
Nobody's on attack mode.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, you start letting down your guard, and then you start actually absorbing the lessons from those around you in that better state, in that better environment. And so, but it was a challenge because, you're being brought up in this mindset of like, it's just me against the world. And when you get put by people who are not like that and they're just on a different wavelength, you actually can push yourself away from winning because you're caught up in your own mind. And it took me a while to learn from it, but how I learned from it was being all about you against the world, I naturally was competitive, so I wanted to naturally beat every single person around me.
Gamify it again.
Yeah. Like, if you can get 3 sales, I can get 6.
Right.
And so as telemarketers, as the telemarketing game, what the hardest thing about it was to get a social security number. Because you're a telemarketer, you got to call people who weren't expecting your call, talk to them, and then at the end of the conversation, get their social security number, their date of birth. And that was usually the block that everyone had problems with.
That was the Holy Grail, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was the Holy Grail. And it was so difficult that the manager would give the person who hit 4 social security numbers the okay to go home and get paid for that full day. Mm-hmm. Well, you told me that. Like, now, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go outside and play. Yeah, So I was naturally, I got real good at getting them to give me their social, which everyone thought was the most challenging thing. But me, being the tough guy that I was like, yep, I got it. And I would just walk out. But then they put spotlight on me where they actually, you got better service, you got better treatment. You were almost looked at in a different light because you had the answer. And man, I like that.
You got the love.
Yeah, you got the love. And this is something that I was actually looking for, was people to love. This is why I was willing to die for that person, because I wanted that love. I wanted that acceptance. And I felt they gave me that acceptance.
Wow.
And so when I found out that I don't need to be willing to die for somebody in order for them to give me their acceptance, I just need to know how to do something that they also want to know how to do.
Wow.
And now you position yourself as like, okay, well, let me see what else I could do with this.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they put me into a team lead, and within 6 months I got promoted to a loan officer, because when I realized that the environment played a role. And then I realized that there are different environments, right? There's the environment of the telemarketer, mm-hmm. and then there's the next environment that those telemarketers want to grow to, which was sales, mm-hmm. right? It was a different environment. So you're always thriving for the better environment. In all reality, like, the reason why whether you did bad activities to get cash is because you were thriving for that better alternative of not having cash, of not having money, of not having the resources or the ability to get what you want, is because you don't want to be in that state. And so getting into kind of on a higher level, in a better surrounded area, I was able to find that I can actually control that. And so moving from the telemarketer to the next environment, which was loan officers, which is the sales, I remember being in the telemarketing department, and these guys would walk by and they were treated like gods, because they were the ones that were making $20,000.
I can't lie, man. That's what really got me into sales. It's just that you would walk into a building and they'd be like, that's the guy who actually closed XYZ. And you knew everybody was kind of, almost kind of chatting about you a little bit. That's what really drew me to it. But keep on going.
That's really, in all reality, that's actually what inspired me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be that dude, I wanted to be the one that said, oh man, this is the guy that made 30 grand last month. This is the guy that made 50 grand last month. Mm-hmm. I was like, man, I just made 2 grand last month. Like, man, you know what I mean? Like, I'll be happy with 8, but just knowing that it could be done, and knowing that I was headed in that direction. I still, mind you, this is very quick. So I'm the kid that didn't want to tuck in their shirt. You know what I mean? Like, I was the one who, they had a dress code, but I didn't fit that dress code. Mm-hmm. I was wearing K-Swisses and people were wearing, business shoes. And anyway, they wanted to turn me into a loan officer, but my appearance was not that of a traditional loan officer.
Sure.
So this is where I got one of my original mentors. His name's Milton. And man, I love this guy. Every time he sold a deal, he'd be like, man, call me Milton Bradley, because I got all the game. and his
talk about your mentor a little bit, though, man. Because look, I think everybody needs somebody that they can look at and say, oh, okay, there's some pieces of life that you want to take.
Yep.
I've been married for about 8 years now. I lost about 3 different rings, but I got some more at the house. But it's like, I feel like, I don't care what role you're in.
Yep.
If you're striving for something greater, you need something, or a group of people, or just something that you got to have in your life that's like tangible for you.
Yep. That
you can say, oh, this guy gets it, or that girl gets it, and I want to try to pull something from them. So do you mind talking about the mentor a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, it's a great question. It's a great point, because I think that, one lesson that we could take away from, this episode is understanding that when you get to the top of your environment, like your circle of 3 or 4 people, mm-hmm. or your clique or your group, and you get to the top where you're the smartest or you're the successful one, it's unfortunate, but you got to expand now your group, right? You got
to
you have to surround yourself by people who have done more than what you've done. Otherwise, you're just going to remain stagnant, and you're just going to kind of get content. You're going to get settled, right? Because you're the most successful one in your group. Mm-hmm. And this unknowingly kind of holds us, a lot of us back, because this is why we don't want to step outside of our comfort zone, is because outside of our comfort zone is where we're not the leader of our group, mm-hmm. right? And so that's on the deep psychological level. But to answer your question, like mentor, how to find a mentor. Why I was first chosen by this mentor is because I reminded Milton. Milton was from Long Beach too.
Okay.
Milton was like, man, you remind me a lot of my nephews, right? And you remind me a lot of them, and they're just some knuckleheads, you know. And he learned a little bit my background. We related because we're both from the same city. And I told him what I was going through and the recent changes I went through, and he respected that. And I think fate sometimes puts you in positions where you want to go, because I needed to get to somewhere which was to a better state of my life, because I also learned I was having a child, right? So
how old?
20 years old.
20 years old. Okay, yeah.
So I knew I was having child.
Be a leader,
right.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing of the military also is that if you enroll, you actually get paid more if you're married and you have kids. Yep. Right, so we literally rush to get married anyway. Not to sway to the point, or off the subject.
That's a good point, though, man.
Yeah, but you kind of go on this road. But that was the main motive, was like, hey, how do I get to a better state? Because I need to do this for that one thing, and that one thing at the time was because I was about to have a baby, right? And that was my core. That was what the fear of not being able to provide the life for my child, and the fear of having my child go through what I went through. That was enough motivation for me. And so, Milton learned this, and he kind of brought me under his wing, told me, certain things of how to sell. He told me one of the strongest lessons he taught me was how to sell based on the fear of not buying, and that was powerful, because a lot of people at the time was selling why they should buy,
right?
The benefits, right? Well, he put it in perspective, because we're selling a different thing. Like we're selling rates that were way higher than your normal competitor. We're selling adjustable rates, which at the time were very risky. It still is risky. Yeah, it just has this negative stigma about it. But that was our core product, and our fees were very high. Right, our rates were very high. And this is a subprime lender that got shut down for predatory lending, right? And so we didn't know at the time. I didn't know at the time. I was still young, and I just knew that I needed to do A, B, and C to get X, Y, and Z.
Take care of the family.
Right, exactly, take care of the family, right? Yeah. So you didn't necessarily know that you were probably doing bad, but everyone was taking it. So, I had a lot of problems coming up, because I always had that kind of mindset of people don't believe in me, people don't like me, I'm not like them. And I always kind of felt this constant pressure of wanting to prove myself. While that was an advantage, he shared with me, you got to use that, continue using that. But instead of being mad or wanting to show aggression towards somebody, use it as fuel, as to like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it even better. Mm-hmm. And so he helped me develop the mindset and put it in a more professional perspective, because he was an older dude. And, man, I loved his style, man. He reminded me a lot of my dad. My dad was always, like, G'd up, like, just GQ'd, like he creased his pants, you know what I mean? Like, my dad creased his shirt. And Milton was just like that. He was the smoothest dressed cat, dude. He was, man, I couldn't find him. I looked him up on LinkedIn. Probably retired already,
Sure.
But you remember these episodes throughout your life of people who, because we've all had mentors, we just didn't know that they were mentoring us.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of positive and a lot of negative mentors. And because of the media and the age that I was in, and hip hop music, right? Or just the kind of the environment that I was in, I gravitated more towards the negative mentors, because that was the cool thing to do.
To me, it's really interesting. Like I was talking to this artist last week, and it's funny how the power of just music overall impacts culture, right? Mm-hmm. And I think in marketing, sales, whatever your role is, if you're trying to grow your business, you have to understand where culture is going a little bit. Right. And if you look at the fact that, out of Atlanta, a lot of the things that's like big right now is like the whole mumble rap and like the whole drug culture is like really big. Yep. But now it's kind of like counterculture almost a little bit, because you got people coming out like J. Cole, who's kind of talking negative about it. But during the early 90s, mid 90s, like gang culture was,
Yes.
I mean, it was it. I didn't even grow up in like a gang territory, but I mean, we wanted to be in a gang. You know what I mean? I mean, because that's what it was about.
That was the cool thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I grew up right in the city, and I was right in between two different gangs, but my neighborhood wasn't.
Yeah.
We didn't claim because we didn't have those type of people coming up, right? We had households, cats would go home early, but if you want to stay out, you can be involved.
Yeah.
But gang culture kind of had this whole influence of people to be tougher than what they really, and even should have even thought about doing, and to push people in this whole direction that I think had a huge input, that had a huge negative influence on people because that was their mentors.
Right.
So, who was your favorite rapper growing up, man?
Man, my favorite rapper growing up, to be honest, was Method Man from Wu-Tang.
Wu-Tang guy.
Yeah.
Oh, I was huge in Wu-Tang. Yeah.
I even went through a phase of Lil Wayne because he had this one thing called hashtag flow. Yeah. Right. So he would say a verse and kind of hashtag it with the word that that it resembles. But why I like them both, and I think that you touched on a good point, is the power of influence, right? Like it can influence you so much where you're willing to literally die for something or hurt yourself for something.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's wild. It's insane. And now, but that was in a society where we're influenced by music. We didn't have access to internet. We didn't have access to blogs. And so all we could really refer to was our cassette tape or a CD, my CD book, right? Like, this is my life. This is my emotional book, right? Yeah. Well, now today, everyone has a computer in their phone, right? Everyone has access to their favorite superstar right away on Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, YouTube. And because of this, now there's so many different influences. I think it's going to be hard to really kind of filter out what's real and what's not, because in my climb, or at least in my journey of trying to create also my brand, I'm really learning a lot of what actually attracts people, and unfortunately, it's not the real content, right? It's not funny. It's weird, but what actually attracts them is the Gotti watch. It's the big boat, right? It's the lifestyle grab. It's the lifestyle, right? Yeah. And
it tracks. It's fine. Yeah. Right. It still works today. I mean, if you look at music right now, I mean, a lot of times the best artists, or the most popular artists, I should say, aren't the people who necessarily have the best flows or have the best insight or just the most, introspective type of guys. I mean, but it's people like Cardi B who are like, she's this authentic lifestyle and people like her. And so therefore you're like, I want more Cardi, right?
Yes. And, in looking at these different resources now, or these persons of influences, I think it could be our advantage, and it can also be kind of our demise as well. Right. Because because it's so easy to get influenced by someone and be a part of their life, if you're following the wrong person, you could be wasting a lot of time in that direction. Wow. Because there are a lot of people who sell real expensive courses, and it's just some boo-boo content.
Can we just talk about this for a little bit more, man? Yeah. I mean, man, because there's a lot of bad advice out there.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you kind of building up your whole brand a little bit to kind of help kind of counter that? Because that's true. I think that stuff these days gets exposed quicker than it did in the past.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because people start talking, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I first started doing the vlog, I had to go through the whole challenge of being perceived the wrong way, right? Sure. It brought me back to when I was like 20 years old and thinking everyone's against me. Yeah. I was my worst critic. And so but I knew it was a challenge that if I learned to overcome, I can learn how to give more. And if I can give more, I can receive more, right? Yeah. And so I understood that was my bridge to the end result. And I wanted the result. And so in the process of doing it, I came out real, just be yourself. So I listened to influencers like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? And just like, hey, be yourself, be genuine, just talk, just do you, right? Don't care about what anybody else thinks. And so when I started doing it, I was very aggressive. Okay. My very first couple
battle
videos.
Rap almost.
Battle rap, And I was just like almost freestyling to the point where I was like just mad at the camera. But that was just me. That was me coming out. And then it grew. It gradually grew. I became more calm and more comfortable. Mm-hmm. But that was me because I had a choice. I could have been myself, or I could have been, like a lot of the influencers, unfortunately, that are an option on social media where they're like, hey, how are you? They're just trying to sell you. They're fake. You could just tell they're artificial.
YouTube ads.
Yeah, YouTube
pool parties.
Lamborghini. Like, that's not your Lambo.
Okay, I get it.
So So, but
Ready
you
for the
see
weekend,
that,
I get it.
right?
Do about 20 videos.
Yeah. And so that can either sway you away, kind of like an objection, right? Like, oh, I don't like sales anymore because of this objection. Well, kind of those fake artificial influencers are now my objection, right? Now that could sway me away and be like, oh, no, you want to mess with this? This is all BS or whatever. Or I could use it as motivation to say, hey, oh, you think that's good? Wait till you see this, right? Now, wait till you get a gander of this information. Like when you approach it like that, it actually becomes now your stepping stone to get above and beyond that challenge, right? And so now if I see these influencers will be selling like $1,000 course on how to create social media, I'm like, come on, man. Like you know that their whole intent is just to build up a following, but it's all fake. It's all fake followers, right? So even though they got 1 million followers, if you look at their followers are bots. Right? But because we see that they get thousands of likes, we believe that they know what they're talking about. And so that's where the whole misconception of saying, you're just kind of seeing the power of influence. I mean, if the influence of rap music at a time before internet was around influenced us so much where we were willing to die for a cause for 3 letters, right? For a set or a click, and it influences that way. Now we have social media that actually influences in a different way, where we see more likes, more views, or that gaudy watch, and we now put our life in their hands because we believe that they have the answers. And what happens is when we invest our time or money in that direction and we find out they didn't have the answer and we're back to square one, we then resent ourselves, right? And now that's what makes me mad, is because a lot of people are going to reach out to them in hopes that they have the answer to help lift them higher. And then they're going to find out that they're back to square one. They didn't go anywhere except negative in their bank balance. Yep. And now, who are they to blame? They're going to blame themselves. Like, man, I was a sucker. I should have never fell for that. And now when real people, genuine people come in on the game, and they have something that can really help that person, they're going to remember them getting burnt, right? Like, oh, man, I don't know if I should trust this person. So that person's burnt now. And now they don't have the access to virtual mentors. They're not necessarily open anymore to accept mentorship because they were burnt, right? So that's where I think those negative, influencers are going.
You know what's funny, man, is that lots of these guys I see who charge like a couple $1,000 for up and coming salespeople, because a lot of times you can tell the information is for a newer salesperson. Yeah. And it's like, man, a couple $1,000 for a 21-year-old, 25-year-old. That's a lot. I mean, that's a nice little ticket for some of them, Yeah. I mean, so if you come into it, you're ready to kind of get some take-home type of stuff. Yeah. And I haven't bought one, so I can't even say exactly what's going to happen, but I'm just imagining what's on the other side of this. Yeah. And it's like, man, I doubt a lot of them, based off their content that I see, is really going to give you something that's going to help you generate business in your industry. Yeah. I mean, for one, I think it makes a lot of sense to get a mentor who really understands your circumstances. Yes. I mean, because, I could talk to you about doing face-to-face sales. That's what I do, but I'm not in the place to really have a real conversation about getting deals done over the phone strictly. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, so I wouldn't recommend someone come talk to me about that. Yep. I would definitely push it, Yeah. I mean, so like, tell me about exactly your whole lane that you're kind of working in.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, a lot of my techniques or information I share on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, a lot of it is really about emotional intelligence. It's really what I learned, and I'm very passionate about that because I know it very well. Mm-hmm. And I've been able to design my lifestyle that I have now through it. And so what's different through the content that I give is it's not based on some application. It's not based on some software. It's actually based on the science of understanding how people respond. Mm-hmm. And it's the science of how to orchestrate your communication in a way to persuade the person who hears it to react in a certain way. And, I do disclosures all the time because the stuff that I do share is very powerful. Mm-hmm. And if it can be used for bad purpose, it can be used to do harm. But I trust that everyone who takes the time to listen to these channels, they're not on that wavelength, but still, I want to make sure that the audience knows that even though I teach you how to manipulate or persuade, it should be for a win-win. It should be for the better of your prospect. It should, because we find ourselves in a position where we need to sell people in order to help them to help themselves, right? Yep. Because a lot of our audience now has this guard because they have probably been burnt, or they have probably spent X amount of dollars on this mastermind class or this course, but they didn't learn anything from it. And so now they have this defense, kind of this guard, kind of like all of our prospects do. They get this guard when they feel like they're being sold. And so when you get into a position where, like me, for example, I sell something that could be used in any form of communication. It doesn't even need to be sales. It could be, relationships, right? It could be parenting. But because I understand the game and I planned it out, I knew that I needed to go very hyper niche focused. And so I saw an opening in mortgage banking that there's no influencer, no sales trainer that's doing it like this, right? It's just a different level. Everyone, again, is trying to sell apps or gizmos or softwares. And I'm coming in saying, hey, you don't need any of that. You just need to know how to properly communicate in order to get that message, right? And so whether it's in phone or over face to face, you're really just understanding empathy, right? You're really understanding all the core components of emotional intelligence to influence them to not only want to do business with you, but tell all their friends and circle to do business with you.
That's exactly what you do, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really know how to kind of put the right verbiage behind it, but you really break down empathy.
Yeah.
And that's something I had to learn just through being married for so many years, quite honest with you. I mean, like, being able to take yourself and put it inside somebody else's shoes, unbiasedly, not with your own lenses on, or say, this is based on my experience, I know what you're up to, not with your own type of selfish wants and needs, but be able to be unbiased and say, all right, let me just understand. Just understand, and just understand what and why you want to accomplish blank, right?
Yes.
That's huge, though, man.
Huge.
One of your trainings I was listening to on YouTube, you were talking about how to get over just that very first roadblock a lot of people have whenever they're trying to have any type of cold calling.
Yep.
And what's funny is that I was thinking, like, man, I always think that sales is this like art and science type of mix.
Yep.
Whereas, like, you have to know the math behind it, like this amount of calls, this type of way, blank at this time of day helps me, whatever. That's like the math part. That's the kind of the science piece. But the art piece is the part that it's just kind of, you have to kind of learn through experience. But I feel like what you taught them was a little bit merge of both, though.
Yeah.
I mean, which is rare.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, all right, we got to talk.
Yeah.
I mean, because most people don't know how to kind of merge the two to where it's like, okay, we're not just going to talk about the actual math part of it. Like, okay, purely gamify it, right? If I hit this button X, Y, Z amount of times, by the time I get done punching it 200 times, I'll get 2 deals. Right? Opposed to I'm just going to persuade someone just for the sake of just kind of trying to woo them into this big old lullaby type of conversation.
Yeah.
Both skills are very they're definitely mandatory. Right. But when you can merge the art and science of it, you got something special happening, man.
Crazy special, because I came up in the industry that people were working 14-hour days. They're working 16-hour days. They're on the phone hustling. And what I found was that some of these top producers mingled the two, the art and the science. And a lot of them just did the science. So they just did the numbers game. And I probably came at it from kind of a lazy standpoint, like, I don't want to work myself to the ground. I want a higher conversion ratio. Whoever I talk to, I want the absolute strongest chance to sell them.
Right.
So I looked at it as almost kind of a shortcut to hack that system and say, okay, well, how can I turn this numbers game, like, never mind your KPIs. I want to know my conversion, right? I want to improve my conversion. So if you need to speak to 100 to sell 2, I want to learn how to speak to 10 and sell 2. Right. You see what I'm saying? Because my whole goal was to, I don't want to work 12 hours, 14 hours. I want to do everything I can in 6 to 8. And so it was funny because I came from a very kind of just almost a lazy standpoint. But ultimately, when I experienced it and I figured out the system, I naturally then put 14 to 16 hours in because it was addictive to get that result. And so I agree with you. I think that when you learn not only the science, like just the numbers game, right? Like, get your 60 dial outs and you turn it to the art where it's, don't just dial out 60 times, get 10 connections, right? Actually connect with 10 people. Your focus is not on the dial outs, it's the result. And when you add in emotional intelligence or that EQ or that empathy, it makes you sound in a different way, like you're remastered, right? Like you're just sounding a completely different way, a little bit more crisp, a little bit more clear, a little bit more on their wavelength to a rhythm that they like. You see what I'm saying? And what I found was that I naturally had to learn all this coming up because I needed to speak to my elders because they weren't supposed to be taking care of me anyway. Wow. I wasn't supposed to be living with them anyway. And to ask that person who is already doing my dad a favor so that I can get a Nintendo or I can get a Nintendo game, I had to come at it in a completely different, approach. And so that's been refined. And so literally since a kid, I've been kind of working on that message. And now I get to commingle it in the lingo and language that mortgage bankers relate to.
So cool.
Yeah. So now mortgage bankers don't need to look at a car salesman, sales trainer for their tactics, right? Their wording or their script, or they don't need to buy some expensive software to play the science part of it, to play the numbers game of it. I'm showing you how to actually apply what you already have. You just don't know it yet to the game that you're doing every day, and as a result of understanding how to apply it to your game, you can apply it to yourself as well.
Man, it's a total different way to think about having conversations with people.
Yep.
It's not so you can, put a check in the box anymore. Yep. You're taking it way further. You're like, okay, how can we both end with this place that's, both of us feel empowered?
Yeah.
Obviously, as a salesperson, we want to do our jobs, get that spiff, get the rip, get that actual check, whatever it is for you. And that's great, but you can't lead with that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, because you'll be totally exposed, man.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, man, we are getting close to wrapping up, but I want to know what's coming up for you, and I got one more question coming up too, man.
Yeah.
So what's like in the pipeline for you? What type of projects are you working away at?
So right now, my main focus is just really expanding the brand, getting the brand awareness. So I'm hitting up a lot of call centers within California, South OC where I'm at, and offering to do a free meeting, like a free sales training. And the information I share is not what's being heard right now. So that's my kind of my niche, right? It's my value. But more important,
free sales training.
Yeah, free sales training. Let me give you a gander of this content, just because I know that that's going to give me least resistance to bring attention to what's here.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what we need as marketers and sales. We need the attention, because without the attention, you can't make a sale anyway. And so I understand that the investment, even though I don't see the immediate return, I need to do what I need to do in order to do what I want to do. And what I want to do is affect more people and teach them that this game isn't a grind, it's a game, right? And if you look at it as a grind, you're choosing to look at it as a grind. Whereas if you choose to look at it as a game, I'm going to teach you all the codes. I'm going to teach you all the up, down, downs, left, right, all you need.
right.
I'm going to show you how to do this game. And if you take the lessons learned, like through my digital course, even though a lot of the lingo, and I have it available, it's courses at salesremastered.com. There's a free script for anyone who's in sales. Even if you don't sell mortgage loans, I have a free sales script that's available at salesremastered.com. And it teaches you how to not only do inbound calls, but also outbound calls. And so it gives you literally the wording of how to approach an outbound call, which is very powerful.
Yep.
Because a lot of us hold back from doing outbound calls because we simply don't know what to say. And this gives you a different perspective on how to view that outbound call. But the courses that I have right now is primarily for mortgage banking. But if you interchange the lingo, so instead of my objection on that course is, what's your rate and fee? Well, your objection could be, what's your bottom line, or what's your contract term, or you just interchange the objection and you still have the same response. You still have the same approach. And but again, because I need to stay hyper focused, I need to expand the brand in the language that I speak before I can expand it to a language that everyone else speaks.
True, but but still though, man. We have the same conversations when I'm out selling. Everybody has a couple of those gut, just no, you know what I mean, like roadblocks, objections, where it's just like anytime you feel like you're in a pitch, you want to say no, and you're looking for the easiest no and reason to kind of exit, right?
Absolutely.
Because most people don't want to just hear a presentation normally.
Yeah. Well, we're being pitched all day long.
Yeah.
Think about how many times you see immediate advertisement of a sale, of buy now, of we got the lowest cost, we got the lowest rate. We again, empathy, right? You're seeing that your prospect, the person that you're trying to sell, is being sold to multiple times a day. And so if you come off as a salesman, you're going to sound like those multiple advertisements they see every day.
Yeah.
And so they learn to mute you out. Kind of like when you walk into a store and you hear that sales rep saying, "Can I help you find something?" You naturally say, no.
Yeah. Even though you're clueless.
Yeah.
You don't know
you
where to
really
go.
need help, right? You're like, "No, I'm okay." Because those are triggers. Those are sounds that put you in a place where you have to be on guard, right? And the reason why you want to be on guard is because the human nature, our instinct is to protect ourselves. And with that, our instinct is to protect our time and our money.
Yep.
And so if we need to protect our time, our money, and ourselves, one of the dangers is a salesman, right? And so if you present yourself as a salesman rather than a professional or a consultant, then you're already setting yourself up for friction. And so that's what I teach you on these courses. Like the new selling is consulting. Consulting is the new selling.
It is.
Right? It's not about pitching. It's about collaborating now. You know?
Man, all right, so we got to talk about this. I was about to wrap it up, man, but talk about the importance of having that side-by-side conversation with your prospects, clients, whoever, and not, coming at it from a, let me close you. From a pitching standpoint. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so, no worries. So I think the problem and the challenge is with a lot of salesmen, regardless of what industry you work in, whether it's selling cars, selling home loans, or selling gizmos and gadgets. I think the initial resistance that we all face up front is having this stigma of being pushy, of wanting to sell something, being more focused on making a sale. Whereas if we came off in the approach of, hey, how can I actually help you? Let me make sure I can help you save some time. Let me make sure you're in the right place. Imagine that. So if you walked into a store, instead of hearing someone say, hey, how can I help you? Or can I help you find something? Instead of saying that, because that's going to trigger a sales reaction, what if that salesman said, hey, let me make sure you're in the right spot. I'll save you some time. Boom. Now I'm open to talk to this guy, right? Yeah, where's your blah, blah, blah. That's just that change in that wording. If you were a commission rep and you relied on that one intro as, hey, can I help you find something, right? That's a sale. But if I say, hey, you know what? Let me make sure you're in the right place. Let me help you save some time. What are you looking for? That's a different perspective. Now you're looking at that sales associate as kind of a tour guide, but more importantly, a professional, right? Someone who knows their stuff, who knows exactly where to go. Yeah, a resource.
Yeah.
And so I think that, when it comes down to our sales, the challenge that we have is that we are coming off like that salesman, like, hey, can I help you find something? We're asking, we're offering, we're not suggesting, and we're not driving. Where if we suggest a solution to something that they're emotionally tied to, which their instinctive reaction is to protect their time and their money, I know this. And I'm going to use it to my advantage to extract the information that I need in order to learn what you will buy. Does that make sense? So you put 2 and 2 together and you're like, okay, well, the challenge of making a sale is me learning the things that they desire, how they see things. Like you said, we have our own lens on our own point of view. Salesmen do also, but more importantly, our prospects have this point of view. They have their own lens. And the issue is that with sales today, we're focused on our own lens rather than looking at it through the lens of the others. And if we take the time to actually look at it through their lens, we'll see their point of view, we'll see their value, and we'll not waste time on what they don't see as value. And a lot of salespeople right now are wasting time on what they don't see as value.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what they believe, or the salesman is going in as, is they believe that they're giving value by offering a solution or asking if they want to buy, right? And so this sales script that I have online, it's a matter of the traditional saying, hey, it's a great day at my company. I just want to see if you're in the market to refinance, right? That's how normal cold calls sound.
Sure.
Whereas
it's a great day at my company.
Yeah,
it's so true though, right?
It's very true. It's so true. You're just like, man, how are you doing this right now?
Yeah, right.
But again, that's because it's science and it's not art.
Yep.
It's more numbers game. Like someone's bound to say, yeah, I am in the market, but how many times are you going to get shot down? Whereas if you came through and said, hey, my name is Daniel, just a quick notice, I'm sending over a complimentary report. It's going to your email now. It's actually going to give you some insight on the recent developments in your area. It's allowing you to see how much that house sold for down the street. And it's going to tell you the rating of your school system. So, if you got kids in the school district, that's your thing. It'll have it all there. Anyways, it's on its way. It's going to go to your Gmail account. Of course, they're going to agree with it, right? Because how can you stop something that's on its way?
Right.
And then before you let them go, or they assume that you're going to let them go, say, hey, while I got you on the phone, let me go and tailor it out a little bit. Let me make sure it's actually worth your time in viewing. Now you have their attention. Now you have you have their interests, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what salesmen do, is just continue creating that curiosity, learn to give that movie trailer experience where I need to know what happens next. And the consumer or your
movie trailer experience.
Yeah,
all right, we gotta go tweet that.
The consumer or the prospect is not going to want to know what happens next if they believe they're going into a sales environment, if they believe they're going to a pitch table. You know, so if you think every time you were at a pitch table and you knew you were being pitched, you were on guard.
Of course.
You know, you didn't
rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. We all should, because again, that's our human instinct. This is human nature, protecting ourselves, right? Protecting our time and our money. And so we naturally defend ourselves, and we are more inclined to say, let me think about it, rather than saying, yeah, you know what, you're right, let's do this. Well, how do I get that response? And what I've learned in order to get that kind of response is you need to communicate with them on a whole nother level. You need to sound completely different, and you need to trigger reactions and emotions that they view as value, that they need right away.
Right.
And if you could do it masterfully, if you could do it creatively, like the way I share with you at Sales Remastered on YouTube or Facebook, you're not only going to find least resistance, but you're going to be like, damn, I could have done this the entire time.
I mean, but dude, you went right back to what I really think it really sums up how you sell, man. It's empathy, though. I mean, because not only were you thinking about it, okay, let me take my own lenses off, right, and my own previous negative experiences. You flipped it to say, let me understand what the customer is also experiencing.
Yes.
And they've walked into numerous retail outlets and said, can I help you means, can I sell you?
Yeah.
I know that shit. Right? So let me kind of flip it for them as well.
Yeah.
So I can show them that I'm going to bring something different to the actual table.
Yes. I always use the analogy, and you know, we're married. I've been married for 5 years yesterday.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
big,
you
big
too.
Move. Yeah, thanks,
and being, you know, before we were married, we were also in the courting game, right? It's probably how we got our spouse. And the way, and if you remember, like when you were in the dating scene, like how you would get a girl's attention or how you really courted them was acting like you didn't even notice them, right? Like you didn't even want them, right? Like they weren't there because it was that attraction because you looked different. Every guy was giving them the attention. Every guy was trying to sell them that one thing where we came off different. We acted like they weren't even there.
Right.
Now they gravitated towards us. And it's similar to that. You know, I use that reference because it is that way where it's like, you know, you got to just stop pushing out this message and be all about them. Like, how can I attract their interests? And how I can attract their interest is not being like everyone else. You know, being that one person that's different and you want to learn more, you know?
Man, you know, it's crazy how much, I mean, even though people like to say it's just business and, you know, you have to kind of break down things right to the hard numbers and facts. It's to me, I'm like, yeah, right, man. I mean, like so much of this is like a relationship, a relational type of experience than is more so like a hard X's and O's type of setup. And when you look at just how you go about treating people just through and through, like, you know, whether you're dating, courting, married, or just me and you saying what's up, like, hey, what are you up to? You know, like that whole just coming into it with, I'm not expecting this of you. You know what I mean? I'm just curious to see what you're doing.
Exactly.
And that's it. You know what I mean? And when you have that type of cap on as a straight salesperson, it's a game changer.
Different. It's way different.
I mean, like the type of conversations after my nose blow me away. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not even about like, okay, I closed the deal. I mean, of course I'm trying to close. Let's not get that twisted. That's definitely a piece of what I'm up to. But with that, I really enjoy, even after we get to the point of, you know what I'm doing is not really for you, or vice versa. It's not a good fit right now, but we're still at a good place. You know what I mean? We're like, I still want to have lunch. I still want to link up. I still want to be a support to you and whatever you're up to.
Absolutely. And I think we all should approach it that way because even if you can't flip that person now, it doesn't mean that person is just gone.
You never know what happens.
You could either flip them next time or that person can introduce you to a network that just needs your service. But because you left on the good note, whereas if you go in with that dated strategy of just trying to close, right? That ABC mentality, then you're going to give yourself an impression that no one wants to mess with you anymore, right? Like all you want to do is push your product. But if it comes from a genuine center where you're like, hey, let me help you save some time. Let me make sure you're in the right place. I'm going to take care of you. Oh, doesn't look like I take care of you now, but I pointed you in the right direction. They still view you as a resource. and that's your foot in to get referral business.
I think I'm gonna call this one empathy versus ego, man. I mean, because I think so many salespeople struggle with this, and I know something I struggle with even right now. But I know it's the actual game changer when it comes to really growing in sales. Yeah. All right, I got this question. I really ask everybody. It's called the Triple G motto. I try to live by this, and it's growth, grit, and give. Mm-hmm. If you had to put those in like order, just for yourself, how would you put them in order? Growth, grit, and give. And
sure.
Kind of why?
I would actually put it in reverse. Okay. Right? So in order to give, I need to have the grit. And in order to have the grit, I need to be able to grow. Right? So in other words, our end result is we want to give. Whether we want to give our bank balance, or we want to give our family, or we want to give the surroundings to our kids. At the end of the day, it really is how do I get to a point where I can give? And without an understanding that grit plays a role, you're never going to grow to be able to give. So if grit becomes your bridge to give, you need to grow, and through grit is how you grow. So growth is your first step. Grit is the actual action that gets you to that give. That's how I would look at it. I believe, because the hardest thing though is to take that first step, and that first step is growth. And why growth is the hardest thing to do is because growth is something that's different from our normal sequence of events that we're so comfortable in. And if we become so comfortable where we're not growing, right? But if we have the courage, or at least the kind of the strength or the hustle or the mindset to take that step to grow, meaning that you're doing something that you're not familiar with, that seems out of reach, that seems is probably going to be a challenge, and it actually scares you, that's a good sign, right? As long as you're not hurting nobody.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. That's a real good sign that that's something that's going to help you grow. But you're not going to grow until you continuously do it, and that's where grit comes in. You got to go through the grind. You're going to be doubted. You're going to hear naysayers. Your mind's going to get in your way. Your own internal dialogue is really going to mess with you, because you're going to start questioning yourself, like, am I supposed to do this? Was I meant for this? No one sees it. And if you continuously push through that grind, that in itself is the grit. That in itself is your bridge to get to that point of giving. And now, and what's funny is that through the grit and through the process, you're actually giving. See?
100%.
So that's how I put it.
Man, most people kind of flip it the other direction, but I think that I really like what you just said there, man. Yeah. So tell everybody just kind of how to find you, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up, man.
Yeah, definitely. So how you find me is you can just search, you can literally Google #Sales Remastered. That's one word. If you go to any of the major social media platforms, the handle is @Sales Remastered. Majority of my audience find my videos helpful to listen to in the morning, and that's why I have the Breakfast of Champions. It's on a different level, this Breakfast of Champions episode, because I believe that the content that I share is beyond just selling, is beyond just negotiating. It really does come down to selling ourselves on developing the right habits that creates the mindset in order to grow, grit, and give. You see what I'm saying? In order for us to reach those levels. So how you can find me is you go to salesremastered.com. At the bottom of the website or the homepage has all the media channels, or you can just open up your social media app that you're most on and search #Sales Remastered in the search bar. You'll find me.
Dude, I really, really do appreciate this whole conversation. Empathy is one of the biggest things I pulled away from it, man. And you know what? Everybody should definitely go to your website, download the actual free resource that you already have there for them. Yeah. Why not? Because so many of us are afraid afraid of just getting out there, picking up the phone, having that awkward conversation, and I think you could probably help them make it a little bit less treacherous, at least anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm gonna help you change it to a game.
Much appreciate your time, though, Daniel, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It was fun chopping it up, and I definitely live and eat in this type of community, and I think that hustle is something that's really going to set you apart. But the definition of hustle today is to do what you need to do in order to do what you want to do. And I appreciate you for putting this info out there, because it helps us do that, dude.
Hey, man, look, I'm just trying to get better too, man. So, I feel like I'm being selfish with it, but hopefully everybody else can kind of glean some jewels away as well.
Yes, sir.
Dude, much appreciated, brother.
Thank you, man.
Till next time.